back to CTN. I'm your host, Robert Van Sloten. Let's get started. So what does this line of code actually do? Property strong, non-atomic, in a string name. Well, simplistically, and we've sort of dealt with this, is it creates a property for the class called name, which is accessible through dot notation. More specifically, though, it automatically synthesizes an underscore name instance variable and a setter and getter method. So the actual storage of the variable of the information is this variable called underscore name. It synthesizes two methods. There's a getter that returns an NS string, and it's called the method name is name. And there's a setter, and the method name is setName. These are actually invoked when you use dot notation on the left and right hand side of the equal sign. You could also call these methods by just saying object and then the method name. That's legitimate also. Let's go over to the desktop, or let's go over to Xcode, and we'll dig into this more deeply. Okay, I've created a very simple project called set and get. It has a data class called CTN data. This isn't a singleton, it's just a normal class that's derived from NS object. I've given it a property in the .h, strong, non-atomic, NS string name. Let's go over to the .m. Now what I've done here is I've overridden both the setter and getter. So in other words, I'm not getting one that's automatically synthesized. I have coded them. The getter returns an NS string, and its name is name. That's normal, because when you do the dot notation, you just say the object dot name. I have a log statement indicating that it was invoked, and I return the variable underscore name. Now the setters return void, and the name of setters are always set name, and it's NS string, the argument is name. I do a log, and then I set underscore name equal to name. Now why would you want to do this? Well, obviously in this case I'm logging, but sometimes you'd want to do additional work behind the scenes. When a property gets accessed, you may have some internal things you have to do. And it's possible too that when the getter's called, that the property really doesn't exist, it's calculated. Now you'll notice that I explicitly said synthesize name equals underscore name. Normally this is implicit. You get a synthesize and it will actually go and synthesize the methods, and you'll get the variable and you never see them. However, once you've defined both a setter and a getter, the compiler is going to say, okay, fine, you've taken control. It's your responsibility. I don't even know whether there needs to be a variable. Maybe this is all calculated behind the scenes. So this says synthesize the property name and a variable underscore name. Now let's go over to the viewcontroller.m. We'll look at some test code I wrote and actually run this. In viewDidLoad, I go and actually instantiate a CTN data, alloc init, put it into a pointer called data. I set data.name, so I'm accessing the property, equal to simply my data, constant string. I then extract out of data.m, and I put it in a variable called string, str, and I go and output that to the log. Let's run this. Okay, the setter gets called and the getter gets called, and then I get my data as output. Next, let's talk about the arguments that can be given to a property directive. When you define a property, you'll notice there's parentheses and there's some arguments in there. Well, what are these things? Well, we've talked about strong and weak, and that deals with the relationship in terms of automatic reference counting. There's also notion of non-atomic and atomic. So far we've only used non-atomic. Atomic provides the semaphore protection necessary when you have multiple threads. We've used assign, and that was used when you had a simple type like in a integer, which is really just an int. There's also a copy, where you can actually have the object copied as opposed to just referenced. There's a notion of read-only. Some properties may be only accessible for information. You can't modify them. There's a lot of those in various UI kit classes. And you can change the name of the setter and getter and give it some other method name. Let's go back over to Xcode and take a look at a few more things. Okay, I just want to close out the episode with a couple items here. If I comment out the synthesize, you'll notice that I'm going to get errors for the underscore name backing store for the property. In other words, because I have the setter and getter defined, it's not going to create the underscore name. However, if I comment out the setter, it will automatically synthesize the underscore name. One other item is that you would tend to think that you'd want to return self.name in the getter. However, that's incorrect, because what self.name does is it calls the getter. You have recursion here, and if you actually ran this, eventually you would get a Stack Overflow. That's it. I hope this helps. Thanks for watching.